is called obey. To serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. Oh God of creation, direct our noble cause and guide our leaders right. Help our youth the truth to know. In love and honesty to grow and live in just and true. Great lofty heights attain to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Oh, shall reign.
A big round of applause to Nikki Laoye for a beautiful rendition of the Nigerian national anthem. I am always proud to hear that anthem being sung by someone that has a heart for Nigeria, heart for nation, heart for the lyrics and the line. Beyond the music just being an interesting something, it's every single line talks about being a Nigerian. Every single line is a pointer to who we really should be as a Nigerian. And I must tell you this, you can't practice the lines of the national anthem and you're not a better person for it. So today I welcome you all over Africa to the 2020 Day 2 I'm a Nigerian conference. I am excited about this day and I hope you are too. And we're going to be learning from people from different countries in Africa. Africa is a beautiful land. The topic for today, or the theme of today's NAMI Nigerian conference, is the Africa we want. I want to ask you, what is the Africa of your dream? What is the Africa you envision in your mind? We are Africans. We are beautiful. We are the largest continent next to Asia. We have all the natural resources, from gold to salt to sugar to petroleum to diamond to titanium to uranium. You can count it. As in, Africa is a blessed nation. And I just want to say to us today that we're going to have a nice time having our friend all the way from South Africa, even though he's been with them at Zimbabwe for a while. We're going to have Godfrey Madanha with us today. We're also going to have Dr. Yinka Lao Shebikon joining us all the way from South Africa. And today we're celebrating the African Day. I want to say, how are you all, and happy African Day. So joining me today will be Faith Jebai. Faith Jebai has been with us at Project One for years, anchoring and then taking us through the beautiful plan for Nigeria, how to become more patriotic, self-reliant, and then promoting integrity among Nigerians. Faith, you're welcome on board. Thank you. Can you hear me, Faith? Okay, no, we can hear you, Faith. Okay, so I couldn't pick the voice of Faith, but then let me bring on at the same time Godfrey Madare. Thank you so much. I hope I pronounced the name very well. Do we have audio with Faith now?
Thank you very much, Bisayo. Thank you very much for this wonderful program. Happy Africa Day.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. Faith, can I hear you? Hello, Faith, can I hear you? Okay, the audio on Faith's side is not up. The audio on Faith's side is not up. So I'm just going to go straight to talking to Godfrey. Please, can you tell us a bit about yourself, Godfrey? How has it been growing up in Africa?
Oh, yes. That's a very interesting question. But let me say I'm here today because I'm a Nigerian, I'm a South African, I'm a Zimbabwean, I am an African. And I'm proud to be an African. I was born in Zimbabwe and I moved to South Africa so many years ago. And that then introduced me to the African continent, where I got to learn a lot about who I am and what makes me an African. So thank you very much for hosting me today.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. Let me just give a bit of background to how I met Godfrey. Godfrey actually interviewed me about some weeks ago on the African Passport Show. And I remember one of the things you told me is, Bisayo, we know you promote Nigeria. We would want to see you promoting more of Africa. And here we are today on this show promoting Africa. I think I have listened and then I am adhering to what you said. It's beautiful having you on board, Godfrey, once again. Now, I was going to ask, what is the African dream? I love what you said. You're African, you're Nigerian, you're everything Africa. Africa is a big continent. Can we actually achieve unity as a nation, as the African nation now? Is it possible? What's your dream of the African continent, the African nation, the unity? What do you think about that?
Yes. It's very challenging when you start thinking about the African dream or the African vision. But it becomes easier when you realize that our leaders, about 57 years ago, sat down in 1963 and they came up with the idea of working towards this vision of uniting the African continent. It's actually sad and a bit weird because today we are meeting under very unfamiliar circumstances. Among other things, the COVID-19 forced us to close borders when we are crying for open borders. The coronavirus calls for social distance when we are advocating for solidarity, togetherness, and a united Africa. Let us, however, do not use this as an excuse to push back on the vision and aspirations of Agenda 2063. I know, Bisayo, you will know how passionate I am when it comes to the idea of Agenda 2063. When you talk about Agenda 2063,
yes, I know.
Thank you for confirming that. A cry for the Africa we want is not just a tagline to summarize the vision and aspirations of Agenda 2063, but an acknowledgement of the fact that we are not happy and content with where we are. Normally, when I do a lot of counseling, and sometimes I meet people who have addiction problems, and when they come through to me and they say, Godfrey, look, I've got a problem, I'm addicted to drugs. And I say to them, thank you very much. That's the first, most important step that you have taken to acknowledge that there is a problem. So when you talk about the Africa we want, it means we are acknowledging, that we are not happy with where we are. We are aspiring for something better. I'm not sure whether we should be talking about the Africa we want or we should be talking about the Africa we need, the Africa we deserve. It is more of a necessity than a luxury when it comes to me. When a 2-year-old Nigerian child cries, I want a goosey soup, it means they're hungry. It means they need something. When Africans cry for the Africa they want, it means they are starving for a prosperous Africa. In Africa, full of jobs. Unemployment figures are running riot in most African countries. I can't begin to imagine what it will be like after this pandemic. But I know before the pandemic, we're talking of about 60% of our young people who are lying idle, and they end up resorting to crime because they are unemployed. We need to keep these young people busy, and we can only do that if we focus on prosperity. It is painful to realize that Africa is everything in terms of resources, and yet we're often seen as a continent with nothing. I know that's very ironic and painful to think about. But there is a number of reasons that we can attribute to that, and I'm sure we'll go through that as we go through our conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Godfrey. I was going to ask, how do you envision being in South Africa, or how has it been for you being in South Africa? You said you were born in Zimbabwe, and now you've been in South Africa after about 20 years. How has it been? Has it been assimilating into a different place entirely?
Yeah, no, I must say, in the beginning, it was very strange. Obviously, there was a huge culture shock. I got to be introduced to a new environment altogether, but with time, I then realized that, Africa is one. And the more I traveled, the more I got exposed to other countries. You talk of Ethiopia, you talk of, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia. You go there and then you see that there's actually a lot that we have in common than what we have as our differences. And, I began to focus more on that which we have in common. And I found it, that I'm actually in very, familiar territory. So, I enjoy being an African. I enjoy being in South Africa. I feel at home. I sometimes forget that I was born in Zimbabwe. That's why I have to keep my Zimbabwean flag close to me, so that I keep on reminding myself that, oh, okay, I was actually born in Zimbabwe, though I live in South Africa.
Okay, that's a fantastic one. Joining us today would also be a Nigerian who has been in South Africa for a whole number of years and has made South Africa his home. If we're preaching unity of African countries today, I think Dr. Lahoche is another Nigerian that has proven to us that Africa is home to us. Either you're in your home country where you were born, or you're in any other place at all over the world. So join me in welcoming Dr. Yinka Olaosebiko to the day 2 of the AMI Nigerian conference. It's been a fantastic support with us. And I remember when we first had the first AMI Nigerian conference, Dr. Olaosebiko happens to be in Abuja, and he was a speaker at the first AMI Nigerian conference. Now today we're having the 4th edition of the AMI Nigerian conference, and we're also privileged to have Dr. Yinka Olaosebiko. And there's so much we are also going to learn from him. I believe we will be able to have him share his experience as to what it means being a medical doctor in South Africa, and a whole lot of other things to learn from him today. I'm sure he'll be joining us along, but before he comes up, I'll come back to you. You've been noted for being a sound author, Godfrey. Your books, are they pro-African, or they're in a particular sector of the education?
Oh yes, I'll talk about one of my books, which is The Passport. The Passport has poems and letters highlighting the challenges that are faced by people who try to make a living away from home. Now, the title itself, the passport. I know I was listening to the radio today, I was reading tweets and all that on social media, and people are talking about they are dreaming of an African continent that has one currency, that has one passport, that knows no borders. And I'm saying to myself, that's beautiful. I just hope it happens in our lifetime. Now, if you're in South Africa, you would know, part of the South African history says, they talk about there is an incident which happened where a lot of people were massacred. They died because they were protesting against the idea of being forced to walk around carrying what they used to call the dompas, which is your ID. That is black people when they are walking around in the urban areas. Now, so they didn't want that. They said, no, this is against our human rights. We mustn't be forced to walk around with these dompas or with these IDs. We must be free in our own country. And yet, today, in 2020, foreign nationals are forced not to walk around with a card, like a dompas. They're forced to walk around with a book called the passport. Without that, without a passport, then, sometimes, you are locked up, you've got to prove, that you are legally here and all that. And I'm hoping that one day, we get to a point where, we feel it's against our human rights, to force our own people to carry a dompas in 2020 because they were born in a different country across the river.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for that. The passport, that's a fantastic one. I know that the Africa we really want is the one that is united, can drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity. And I believe that is don't have in Africa, sincerely. Sometimes when I look, over 30% of the world natural resources in Africa. We have the numbers, we have the people. So there is nothing that actually can be withheld from us if we all put our hands and our hearts to make sure that Africa is what it should be. Now, talking about leadership, do you think leadership is also another problem for Africa as it is right now? Generally, not just in any particular nation, but for Africa all around.
Okay, there is a leadership guru called John Maxwell. He says, I love him, I follow him a lot, I learned a lot from him. He is my mentor. He says, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And I know our African people also say, the fish rots from the head, which means, everything has got to do, with our leaders. If we have the wrong leaders in place, it is bound to affect the people on the ground. Unfortunately, most of the time in the African continent, be it after elections or, our leaders are always fighting. God knows why they're always fighting. But they forget that there's an African proverb which says when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So most of the people, it's our people that suffer because our leaders are fighting for positions. Not because they are so desperate to save our people, but because they want to be in power so that maybe they can enrich themselves.
That's fantastic to look at. Leadership, everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, it's very important that I also say this to everyone who has joined us today on the Africa We Want segment of the Admin Nigerian Conference, to say that Africa is a place where we all need to get our hands on deck to make it a better place. And one of the ways to start or to cure the problem with leadership is to start from the cradle. One of the things we say in Project One, as far as every child is born with that mentality that Africa is one, Africa is united, Africa is Africa is a place we need to develop, we have what we need to make it better. They grow up with this mentality, knowing that unity is the order of the day. Now, I was being skeptical about talking about xenophobia and all that, but I was going to ask, what was from your, I know you're in South Africa, and it looked at some point that the issue was basically between Africa, Nigeria, and South Africa. But you not being a Nigerian or not being born a South African, I would say, what would you say about what happened at that time in South Africa?
Well, it was not just between South Africans and Nigerians. It was, I think, between South Africans and foreign nationals. But what is very interesting is that, you know, it was not just between South Africans and any other foreign national. It was between South Africans and fellow Africans. Now, when I look at that, you know, for me, I think it boils down to, you know, to self-hate, you know, hating yourself, because the problem was never between South Africans and maybe, for example, Americans or Italians or Chinese, but it was between South Africans and Nigerians, South Africans and Zimbabweans, South Africans and Mozambicans. And I know in 2008, I'm sure there was this Mozambican who was burnt alive. You know, and for me, it is because we hate ourselves so much, you know, that we are not prepared to appreciate or accommodate anything that looks like us. But again, there's a proverb which says, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. So it starts from inside ourselves. If we can start appreciating and loving ourselves, you know, we won't have these problems of xenophobia and the like. You know, if you go to our social media today, there is it disturbs me every day when I go through, you know, your Twitter and you see trending hashtag must fall, whatever, hashtag must fall. Those are, you know, most of the times are the hashtags that are always trending, which means people, they love to see something or someone falling. And if you try to analyze, most of the time you realize that whatever they want to fall is not very different from them. It's someone who looks like them.
That's deep. Self-hate. We can't afford to hate ourselves. We have to love ourselves. We have a better standard of living, quality of life, and well-being of Africans. So, Godfrey, any final word for Africans generally before we bring Dr. Yinka Lau Shebikon on board? Any final words to Africans today as we celebrate the African Day?
You know, I think, you know, as Africans, maybe it's a call that should go to our leaders, but not just our leaders, to every parent, to anyone who is in a position of responsibility or who is in some position of influence, to say we need to leave 2 gifts for our children. The first gift will be the roots, so they know where they are coming from. They need to know who they are, to love their identity. The second gift, we need to give them wings so they can fly.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for being with us today. We look forward to seeing more of you. We welcome you to Nigeria anytime. I said it to you the last time. And I love to have everybody around you. We also hope to get some copies of your book across to Nigerian students, so they could also be familiar with the pages, the poetries, and maybe a lot of beautiful things about Africa. Thank you so much for coming around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For as long as you promise me a goosey soup, I will come.
You can bet on that. Thank you. So let's have Faith join us once again as we go on to speaking with Dr. Yinka Lau Shebikon. Faith, are you ready? Hello.
Hi, Bibi. How are you doing today?
Faith. I'm so good. How are you, my Ghanaian Nigerian?
Oh my, I'm great. I've been learning at Backstage. I mean, it's incredible to see what we can achieve when we have wings to fly. We have no excuse. Should we be given wings to fly? I mean, the first thing is mental sensitization, which is exactly what Project One is doing. Mental sensitization. And then once you're aware of exactly what it is that you should do, the power you have as one person, one individual, one Nigeria, then you will be able to know what to do when you're given opportunity and chances. Oftentimes we find people who are given opportunity, but then they lack knowledge. But then when you're empowered with knowledge and then you're given opportunity and wings to fly, there is no telling the heights that we can achieve as Africans. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faith. I would ask, what has been your experience today? We call it the African Day. And I find it interesting in the middle of running a national program. I'm in Nigeria. Here you're talking about the continent. What do you think about that?
Well, I think to a large extent, honestly, first of all, I'd say we should say well done to ourselves. I think we focus so much on the negatives that we don't get to applaud the positives. To a very large extent, I think media has been one-sided in terms of balancing the thrive and the successes that Africans have been able to accrue over time. So first of all, Africans, because of how much we've achieved over time. Having said that, there still lies so much to be done. Dan said, and I think that's the essence why we're having these conversations with people who stand as role models, people who stand as mentors, people who stand as individuals who have carved a niche for themselves in diverse fields and sectors. But yeah, I have an African dream. For example, the internet. I mean, the network we have, and just trying to run the show and the hurdles that we're trying to face in terms of network stability. I mean, the issues are there. They're looking us in the face. But I think that we have a heart, we have a mind to be able to surmount those obstacles. And as long as we are determined to be able to do that which we've set out to do as individuals and as a group, as a nation, as a continent, there's no telling the heights that we can achieve. So I'm optimistic and positive about the African dream, and I'm certain that we'll get there.
Fantastic. I said to someone, I said, when we started Project One, we started on the African Day, May 25, 2017. And it has actually been a day. So I expect a lot of people from now on to see our hashtag being, I'm a Nigerian, I am African. Please let us start having that outlook towards developing the continent as a whole, not just Nigeria, but the whole of Africa. In Nigeria, I grew up knowing they would say, no, we are the giants of Africa. And then down the line, we started having situations that make a lot of us question and query, are we really the giants of Africa? The theme for this 2020 conference is the giants of Africa. And when I was thinking, I said, then are we really the giants of Africa? Is Nigeria that good and all that? I would say home is good. And we have a pivotal role to play in Africa. So to every Nigerian out there, if we're going to talk about the African we want, a lot lies at your doorstep. A lot lie with you. If you're going to make this continent what it really should be. I was reading a book recently, and it was more like a parody. How when the colonial masters were coming to Africa, they said one of the first things to do them in Africa is to demarcate and cause a division between the African nations, put them in different places, colonized by different languages, and then when you bring another language to a country that already has over 2,000 languages, you unite them across another set of lines, the English-speaking African countries, the French-speaking African countries, and then you put on leadership style that might not necessarily be what we're familiar with, and a whole lot of things. There are so many things I believe we can walk away from. I think it's time that Africans start thinking within themselves and say, this is how we've been doing it. How can we do it in a different and a better way? I love when African Union organizations come together and then they give us 10 things we need to achieve. I know it's done with a lot of policy, and I want individuals to sit down and just ask, I'm not just going to come to this earth and leave just like that. How can I make Africa a better place? How can I leave Africa better than I met it? You need to start having global images of what you can do. Always, like one of those things we say a lot, for to say, don't just ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can also do for your country. For your country. Africa is not too big for you to change. Please, I am saying it to you that you're a giant wherever you are, whoever you are, and you're able to make Africa a better place. I'll be asking Faith to share our last words with people today on the show. We're rounding up. We will not be able to bring in Dr. Lausche because you understand that we're in Africa, right? And then technology is still something we're trying to work on. Aside for Wakanda that told us that we got our own technology. Hopefully we'll get better. But for now, we'll not be able to bring in Dr. Laoshe because of time. And then there's been fluctuations with the network as well. So Faith, please, what will be your final word to Nigerians and then to Africa generally before we close this section? Okay, the network is still an issue generally. But anytime you come up, Faith, please, you can still say something. Once you say a word, I'll keep quiet. I'll know, okay, you're up now.
Basically, country. Think about Nigeria as an individual and always ask the. I would say that Nigeria is not a country. Our identity as Nigeria is yes. You as an individual, like, am I a replica? No, then you're on track. But if your answer is yes, then there is something to and Africa as a whole. If we as individuals can be the change that we desire, then Nigeria can be a place that we love and admire, and Africa can be a place that we are extremely proud of. So I'd say that I'm proud to be a Nigerian and I'm proud to be African. It's one identity.
Thank you so much. Chunu TJ said he wants to say a word to Africa and he wants you to know Africa is home. I'm here. I'm getting ready to run.
I was caught on that word. Well, that's the beautiful thing about being in Africa. I think, if you ask me, I think one of the things we have to our advantage is our originality. We are original people, we're authentic people as Africans. I think what we should do is explore that. Like our guest has said today, we should walk beyond the limitations of our thoughts. The things, our experiences have limited us and have pulled us back from our potentials. Just imagine if we all, let me paint the scenario. Let's assume that, for instance, South Africa is a defending nation. Tanzania is playing left wing, Nigeria is playing right wing. Just imagine all the African countries as a football team, and we play together. How much we will win in any game we find ourselves. There's so much potential in this continent. One thing that even unites us is the color of our skin, even though that some of us may be darker than some others. But if we come together with our potentials as the continent, the natural resources that are here, the things we're discovering every day, and we'll come out with the uniqueness of that, I think we will make a statement that the world will celebrate. Something innovative, something local. We have, just for instance, Madagascar here trying to talk about solution for COVID from herbs. There's so much natural herbs here. There's so much Africa has to give the world. I think we should give ourselves a chance, and then we should celebrate our ability to churn out from our original content what we have to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chunu, for that. Godfrey, I want you to teach us one language today before we all leave today. How do we say goodbye in your language?
Sarai Waganak.
Can you get that again?
Sarai Waganak.
Sarai Waganak. We need to start learning that.
That's
okay, I can say Odaro. Let me teach you that. Odaro. Godfrey, can you say Odaro?
Odaro.
Yeah, thank you.
Did I get it right?
Okay, Faith has the final word, and then I'll say thank you all. See you tomorrow. Faith.
Oh yeah, Bibi, I just wanted to quickly add that I think one of the things that we should work on is the copycat culture, where we just see something working somewhere and we just quickly copy it and want to replicate it, just as we've seen it. I think as Africans, we should own up to our originality. We should own up to exactly who we are. We could learn from other countries, learn from other customs, learn from other cultures, but not at the detriment of the authenticity of exactly who we are, the core of what makes us Africans. So I think that's very important too. While we celebrate Africa, that while you learn, let it be a spice, but not at the detriment of what makes you African. So yeah, blend whatever you want to blend, but then please keep your originality as African. It is true.
Yeah, maybe Bisayo, before I go, Bisayo?
Yeah.
Just to relate to what Faith is saying, I think that's very important. We claim to be independent, but I don't know if we are really independent, because being independent means we are self-reliant. We need to move away from that total dependence on aid and charity. I'm looking at the African Union right now, African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I have nothing against the Chinese. It was built by the Chinese. Can you imagine how difficult it is to come up with a decision that is against the Chinese when you are hosting a meeting in a building that was constructed and funded by the Chinese? That's just impossible. Robert Greene, in his book called 48 Laws of Power, he says, despise the free lunch. Despise the free lunch. So we need to be very careful when it comes to some of these gifts that we get. They come with something hidden.
Sure. We need to move to that. That's another core value for Project One, self-reliance. And then it happens that tomorrow, the topic for tomorrow is self-reliance. So we're going to be having fantastic people joining us tomorrow to talk about self-reliance, being self-reliant, how it can totally change your life, how it is actually the most important tool that you need to move to freedom. It is very, very important. So I'll be enjoying Nigerians to join us tomorrow as we go over the topic self-reliance. It is extremely, extremely important. And Godfrey, it is very important. We need to move from age mentality. We need help. We can do a lot of these things by ourselves. If we put our heads to it, we have what it takes to make the whole world benefit from the resources that we have. And so thank you so much once again, Juno, for joining us as we play the I'm a Nigerian song to end today's version. Thank you so much, Nigerian, and thank you so much, Africa.
Project One Productions. Beautiful people, one Nigeria. Different language, proud Nigeria. There's plenty food, these people good, oh. All of us in peace and unity. Oh yeah, hail Nigeria. Nigeria, sweet as sugar, oh. Different people and Nigeria. No matter where you from, we don't feel. All of us in peace and unity. Oh yeah, hail Nigeria. Oh, I'm a Nigerian too. I'm a Nigerian too. Yeah. Strong people, one great nation. One great nation. Different faces, one Nigeria. No matter what you speak, we say big brother. All of us in peace and unity. We are glad for your Nigeria. Different stories, many places to go. Yeah. Plenty resources, everywhere green, yo. No matter where we go, now we go begin. All of us in peace and unity. Oh yeah, hail Nigeria. Nigeria, sweet as sugar. Different people and Nigeria. Oh, no matter where you from, we don't feel. It don't matter. All of us in peace and unity.
Hello, my name is Mabel, and I am a Nigerian.
My name is Destiny Elu.